The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The third and final presidential debate last night, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Did Trump mess up? How badly did he mess up, or did he dominate? That's what we're going to figure out today. We are getting very, very close to this presidential election, and I know there are many people in the audience who are feeling very fatigued by this election, and they will be glad for it to be over. I will also be glad for it to be over, but I will be more glad if Donald Trump is not the president-elect of the United States on November 9th. So this debate was tense from the beginning. The first debate had podiums and an opening handshake. The second debate had no podiums and no handshake. And at the beginning of this debate, they just walked to their podiums and did not even look at each other. You could really sense the tension from the beginning of this debate. I had some thoughts as to how Hillary Clinton should go about addressing some of the major media stories that had built up over the last week or 10 days. There was this question of how would Hillary Clinton address accusations of sexual assault by women against Donald Trump. I said that she really shouldn't dig into the specifics. She'd have nothing to gain, and she should just say she wants to focus on the issues. She didn't bring it up, but she did answer Chris Wallace's questions about it. We're going to get to that a little bit later. There was this issue of the rigged election, which I thought was an area of opportunity for Hillary Clinton to really slam Trump for the fundamentally anti-democratic things that he's saying. Basically, by saying that the election is rigged, he is sort of saying that he doesn't believe in our democracy in some fundamental way. I think she did well there. We're going to talk about that. And then we have also issues of how did Chris Wallace, as the Fox News host, impact the dynamic of the debate by being the moderator. Now, my sense was that Chris Wallace was going to press both candidates, and he sort of did in different ways. It's sort of debatable whether Chris Wallace impacted the debate in a way that was helpful to one candidate over the other, although I think generally the topics tended to favor Donald Trump. Here's one example I want to start with. This is a question about the Supreme Court, and it's really a question that is a sort of softball for the conservative-minded candidate. What's your view on how the Constitution should be interpreted? Really getting into this red meat that the constitutional fetishists, who often tend to be on the right, love. Let's take a look at Hillary Clinton's answer on this question.
First of all, where do you want to see the court take the country? And secondly, what's your view on how the Constitution should be interpreted? Do the founders' words mean what they say, or is it a living document to be applied flexibly according to changing circumstances? In this segment, Secretary Clinton, you go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks to UNLV for hosting us. You know, I think when we talk about the Supreme Court, it really raises the central issue in this election, namely, what kind of country are we going to be? What kind of opportunities will we provide for our citizens? What kind of rights will Americans have? And I feel strongly that the Supreme Court needs to stand on the side of the American people, not on the side of the powerful corporations and the wealthy. For me, that means that we need a Supreme Court that will stand up on behalf of women's rights, on behalf of the rights of the LGBT community.
This is a good answer from Hillary Clinton because it's a question that, as I said, is a question that favors so-called small government conservatives. The problem I have with it, as reasonable as Hillary Clinton is that she touts a super progressive position on the Supreme Court where the big thing is standing up for the little guy instead of the big corporation. It's sort of ironic given Hillary Clinton's relationship with corporate America. So she gave an answer that turned a conservative-friendly question into something that sounded progressive, but we know, because we've been following this election and Hillary Clinton for some time, that it's a little bit counter to Hillary Clinton's actual cozy relationship with Wall Street and big corporations. Now, Donald Trump tweeted at 3 a.m. that he won the debate, and as we often say, as Newt Gingrich has even said, If you're tweeting at 3 a.m. and you're a presidential candidate, something has not gone quite right. A CNN poll says that Hillary Clinton won. What really matters is how this will affect the polls, and we'll see that in a few days. Hillary Clinton starting, at least optics-wise, with a strong answer to a question that Chris Wallace arguably gave the easier side to, or set up for more success, Donald Trump. Let's get into some of the other areas of the debate. There's so much that went on in this debate that I want to talk to you about. Okay, Hillary's debate attacks on Trump were effective in yesterday's third and final presidential debate. Donald Trump's fear-mongering was also, I believe, effective, at least when it comes to impacting his base. I want to play a clip for you here where Donald Trump talks about mothers of children who have been killed by undocumented immigrants. This is really red meat, fear-mongering, xenophobic stuff from Trump. And although the more rational voter understands that this is completely bogus nonsense, my sense is, and who am I really to figure out how a trumpeter thinks, but I think we've developed sort of a picture of the average trumpeter or Trumpist during this campaign. I think the Trumpists like this type of stuff. Let's take a look.
Mr. Trump, you go first in this segment. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, she wants to give amnesty, which is a disaster and very unfair to all of the people that are waiting in line for many, many years. We need strong borders. In the audience tonight, we have 4 mothers of, I mean, these are unbelievable people that I've gotten to know over a period of years whose children have been killed, brutally killed by people that came into the country illegally. You have thousands of mothers and fathers and relatives all over the country. They're coming in illegally. Drugs are pouring in through the border. We have no country if we have no border.
So Trump there relying on that no country, we're going to have a country thing. This is the type of fear-mongering that a less skilled debater than Hillary Clinton would probably have been damaged by. That line, that sequence played quite well from Donald Trump with the xenophobist nativist crowd. But then Hillary Clinton was able to talk about how we do need to bring undocumented immigrants out of the shadows. When they become part of the formal economy, it's better for everybody. But here is Hillary Clinton's counterattack on Trump, and she slammed him in a way that I thought was very effective. Let's take a look.
What I am also arguing is that bringing undocumented immigrants out from the shadows, putting them into the formal economy will be good, because then employers can't exploit them and undercut Americans' wages. And Donald knows a lot about this. He used undocumented labor to build the Trump Tower. He underpaid undocumented workers, and when they complained, he basically said what a lot of employers do: you complain, I'll get you deported. I want to get everybody out of the shadows, get the economy working, and not let employers like Donald exploit undocumented workers, which hurts them but also hurts American workers.
This is such a key issue in this race, which is that Donald Trump claims to be the solution to many of the problems that he is personally a part of. And we've talked about this when it comes to sending jobs to China and Mexico. And now Hillary Clinton, multiple times actually during this debate, about 2 or 3 times, this was just one of them, pointing out that Donald Trump, for all his talk about trade deals and trade law and whatever, he brought in Chinese steel to construct at least one building, and I believe it's more, although I don't have the exact list in front of me. Trump did not respond to that specific allegation because he cannot respond to that specific allegation because it is true and there is no defense of it. And the fear-mongering that Trump came out with was some nice red meat for the right, but Hillary Clinton doing a good job of turning that back around. Let's talk now a little bit about the discussions of the countless at this point. Who knows what the number is? Is it 10, 11, 17 sexual assault accusers of Donald Trump? My recommendation, my thought yesterday before the debate was Hillary Clinton should really step back from the specifics of the allegations when she is given the opportunity to comment on it and say, I'm here to talk about issues. Voters have heard the allegations. Voters will judge the allegations. Let's talk through a little bit of how that part of the debate went. We will start first with an answer from Donald Trump, which to me makes absolutely no sense.
Why would so many different women from so many different circumstances over so many different years, why would they all in this last couple of weeks make up, you deny this, why would they all make up these stories? And since this is a question for both of you, Secretary Clinton, Mr. Trump says what your husband did and that you defended was even worse. Mr. Trump, you go first.
Well, first of all, those stories have been largely debunked. Those people, I don't know those people. I have a feeling how they came. I believe it was her campaign that did it. Just like if you look at what came out today on the clips, where I was wondering what happened with my rally in Chicago and other rallies where we had such violence. She's the one in Obama that caused the violence. They hired people, they paid them $1,500, and they're on tape saying, be violent, cause fights, do bad things. I would say the only way, because those stories are all totally false, I have to say that. And I didn't even apologize to my wife, who's sitting right here, because I didn't do anything.
I don't know that Donald Trump said anything in that answer that's true, except I do believe he didn't apologize to his wife. That actually rings true to me. Number one, saying that switching gears and trying to accuse Hillary Clinton of paying people to be violent at his rallies, that's been completely debunked in reality. But then claiming that all of these stories from women have been debunked, not a single one of these accusers has been debunked as Donald Trump claims. One woman he claimed he never met, although 5 months ago he said something very different. That's former Miss Utah. This was an answer that made no sense. Now, I'm going to play Hillary's answer. It's not exactly what I would have liked to see her do, but it was a strong answer, and I believe she handled this well. Let's take a listen.
He went on to say, look at her. I don't think so. About another woman, he said, that wouldn't be my first choice. He attacked the woman reporter writing the story, called her disgusting, as he has called a number of women during this campaign. You know, Donald thinks belittling women makes him bigger. He goes after their dignity, their self-worth, and I don't think there is a woman anywhere who doesn't know what that feels like. So we now know what Donald thinks and what he says and how he acts toward women. That's who Donald is. I think it's really up to all of us to demonstrate who we are.
So this is roughly what I suggested, saying we can demonstrate who we are, sort of an allusion to voters can decide whether this is something they want to vote for. I think it was a good move by Hillary Clinton to sort of say, women know what it feels like to have their self-worth entangled with their physical appearance, and clearly Donald Trump is someone who is doing exactly that in his ranking of women, in his writing off some of the sexual assault allegations by implying either to different degrees of directness that he would or wouldn't be with a woman that has the physical appearance of some of the accusers, and then the whole thing wrapped up with a line that brought the crowd to laughter because of how absurd it is, Donald Trump's infamous line about respecting women.
Now and in the future, and particularly for our children and our grandchildren.
Mr. Trump.
Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody. Nobody has more respect.
Please, everybody.
And frankly, those stories have been largely debunked.
Yeah, the stories have not been debunked. The audience could not keep it together. How can you even repeat at this point that you are the most respectful person to women? It's just absolutely laughable, and laughter is exactly what it triggered in that debate hall. Okay, before we go to break, in the debate yesterday, the last presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the issue of the rigged election came up. I believe that this was Donald Trump's weakest moment during the debate, and this was Hillary Clinton's strongest moment from the debate, absolutely destroying what it is that Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump first asked, will you accept the results of this election, no matter what they are? Here is Donald Trump's answer.
Your running mate, Governor Pence, pledged on Sunday that he and you, his words, will absolutely accept the result of this election. Today, your daughter Ivanka said the same thing. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. What I've seen is so bad. First of all, the media is so dishonest and so corrupt, and the pile-on is so amazing. The New York Times actually wrote an article about it that they don't even care. It's so dishonest, and they've poisoned the minds of the voters. But unfortunately for them, I think the voters are seeing through it. I think they're going to see through it. We'll find out on November 8th, but I think they're going to see through it.
But, sir, there's
if you look, excuse me, Chris, if you look at your voter rolls, you will see millions of people that are registered to vote. Millions. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from Pew Report and other places. Millions of people that are registered to vote that shouldn't be registered to vote. So let me just give you one other thing. So I talk about the corrupt media. I talk about the millions of people. Tell you one other thing. She shouldn't be allowed to run. She's guilty of a very, very serious crime. She should not be allowed to run.
Yeah. Does anyone understand the explanation here? I mean, on the one hand, Trump is saying the election is rigged because of millions of people, dead people, all sorts of people who shouldn't be registered to vote. Well, that's been debunked. Then he says the rigging is the fact that media outlets publish opinion pieces and or fact-based pieces that are not good for Trump's campaign. That's not really rigging, that's called reporting, and you might not agree with some of it. And then he says part of the evidence of rigging is that Hillary Clinton is even a candidate because, as he says, she is guilty of a crime. Trump apparently not understanding the definition of guilt because Hillary Clinton has not even been accused of a crime, which is a step that is necessary, that needs to happen before you can be found guilty of a crime. Hillary Clinton destroyed Trump with her follow-up on this issue. Take a look.
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. The FBI conducted a year-long investigation into my emails. They concluded there was no case. He said the FBI was rigged. He lost the Iowa caucus. He lost the Wisconsin primary. He said the Republican primary was rigged against him. Then Trump University gets sued for fraud and racketeering. He claims the court system and the federal judge is rigged against him. There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
This is a mindset. This is how Donald thinks. And it's funny, but it's also really troubling.
Okay.
No, that is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. And that is what must be expected of anyone standing on a debate stage during a general election. You know, President Obama said the other day, when you're whining before the game is even finished, it just shows you're not up to doing the job. Absolutely
strong answer from Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump's entire rigged election thing is a major repudiation, of American democracy at its core. Republican governors disagree with Trump on this, and we're going to dig in much more to the rigged election stuff. Let's take a break. I am joining you today from Las Vegas, Nevada, the site of last night's third and final presidential debate.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Kim Stevenson. This is viewer and listener supported media, and because of the membership program of which Kim Stevenson is a member, we have expanded the program from where it started once every 2 weeks to a daily Monday through Friday show. You can sign up at davidpakman.com/membership, and remember, if you ever shop on Amazon.com, going to davidpakman.com/Amazon will redirect a little bit of your purchase back to the show. Great way to send a few extra bucks to independent media. I do want to remind you that we have this Reddit discussion forum, and the discussion there lately has been really, really good. I'm going to show you some of the topics that have been coming up on our Reddit discussion forum. You can, of course, access it by going to davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT. You can propose guests there. You can propose stories. Viewers talk to each other. Let's look at just a couple of the recent stories that have popped up on our Reddit discussion forum. The first one, which I will show you, Why is David not covering the Podesta email leaks? I like David. I don't align with his political ideology, but he's usually a fair, honest journalist who covers a lot of important issues. Maybe there's a legitimate reason, like too much info to sift through this quickly, but I'm curious why he hasn't at least attempted to cover the Podesta email leaks. Well, fortunately, because I participate in that forum on a mostly daily basis, I was able to go in and say, we've covered the Podesta leaks multiple times, and that is just, maybe you just didn't see it. So a lot of people interested in the Podesta leaks. Another interesting question brought up on our Reddit discussion forum, are we seeing the biggest shift in liberal conservative core values ever this election cycle? And this is an interesting post from Bell Rocks pointing out a lot of the ways in which we've seen ideologies and candidates slightly, or at least as Bell Rocks is arguing, significantly realigned during this election. Very interesting discussion there, and we've been talking about that on the program. Somebody else mentioning on our Reddit discussion forum, simulation theory. What does everyone think of these theories? The idea that we might be living in a computer simulation. I love that topic, and I've actually interviewed astrophysicist Lawrence Krauss about it. And lastly, an interesting comment from Boosie772 on our Reddit discussion forum. Hopefully Paul Ryan knows what he's doing, referencing the idea that Paul Ryan maybe could get Trump to not win, but maintain control of the House and Senate in a way that Republicans could completely and totally obstruct Hillary Clinton, something I do want to talk about more later on. So join us on our Reddit discussion forum, davidpakman.com/Reddit. That'll redirect you. Subscribe, participate. I'm there almost daily. I know Pat is checking it out as well, so check it out. A lot of stories to talk about. Okay, a couple more debate-related stories, and then we're going to move on to other things. Number one, Donald Trump really exposed during yesterday's debate that he fundamentally lacks knowledge, not just about many of the issues that have come up regularly. So, for example, how trade deals work or how most things work, but even about issues that are just so basic that it's really shocking that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. Here's an example, okay? Here's a comment Trump made about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, sort of in the context of Supreme Court justice selection. Take a look.
But I'm asking you specifically, would you like to...
If they overturned it, it'll go back to the states.
But what I'm asking you, sir, is do you want to see the court overturn? You just said you want to see the court protect the Second Amendment. Do you want to see the court overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, if we put another 2 or perhaps 3 justices on, that's really what's going to be, that will happen. And that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I am putting pro-life justices on the court. I will say this, it will go back to the states, and the states will then make a determination.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I strongly support Roe v. Wade, which guarantees a constitutional right to a woman to make the most intimate, most difficult in many cases, decisions about her health care that one can imagine.
How does Trump think this happens? He appoints 2 justices that were recommended to him by the Heritage Foundation or some other harebrained right-wing think tank, and automatically, like the snap of a finger, when you get conservative justices on the court, Roe v. Wade from 40 plus years ago is overturned. I mean, the guy just doesn't understand anything. And then he went even further and exposed, not only does he not understand about the overturning or the changing of law through the appointment of Supreme Court justices, he doesn't even seem to understand much about abortion. Look at this.
Mr. Trump, your reaction, and particularly on this issue of late-term partial birth
Well,
abortion.
I think it's terrible. If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me. Because based on what she's saying and based on where she's going and where she's been, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month on the final day. And that's not acceptable.
Well, that is not what happens in these cases. And using that kind of scare rhetoric is just terribly unfortunate.
Unfortunate is not exactly the word I would use. It's absolutely disgusting. What is Donald Trump talking about? You can rip the baby out of a womb the day before birth? That's called a C-section, right? I mean, this is just so vile and distorted and straight up nonsense. And I'm hopeful, especially since the polls now point to more than half of Americans supporting abortion being legal in most cases for the first time since the passage of Roe v. Wade. We've seen support for that increase more or less steadily over the last 40, 50 years. Hopefully most viewers don't fall for this nonsense, but I genuinely don't know if Trump is lying or he just doesn't understand how things work, but vile, disgusting, and absolutely reprehensible. Last thought about last night's debate, the last, third and final presidential debate. We had this interview, I think it was Howard Kurtz maybe, or Brian Stelter, one of the media bias show guys, interviewed Chris Wallace about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago and asked him, will you be fact-checking or keeping the candidates sort of honest during the debate if they try to lie? And we played the clip, and Chris Wallace basically said, I am not there to fact-check. Others will do that. And it made me wonder, well, what's the point? I mean, you don't really need a moderator just to ask questions. You can have the questions pop up on a screen and have a timer that shuts off people's mics when their time goes off. But I was glad to see that Chris Wallace, in spite of selecting questions that on balance were probably better questions for Trump, although he did completely bungle many of them badly, big league, as he would say, Chris Wallace did drop a major truth bomb when Donald Trump tried to deny the reality that there's a consensus that Russia was indeed involved in these recent leaks connected to WikiLeaks and Hillary Clinton, etc. Trump tried to flat out deny it, and Hillary Clinton, of course, said that does appear to be the case. Chris Wallace interjected and dropped a major truth bomb. I'm going to play for you this 2-minute segment. We'll hear a little bit from Trump, we'll hear from Hillary Clinton, and we will also hear from Chris Wallace. I think that this was exactly the right thing for Chris Wallace to do because Trump was going above and beyond what the known and publicly stated and available consensus is on this issue. And of course, some right-wingers say, oh, Chris Wallace is being really unfair to Trump here. I don't buy that. Let's take a look and you can judge for yourselves.
1,800, by the way, where they expanded and we didn't. 1,800 nuclear warheads, and she's playing chicken. Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race. So I think that this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government trying to interfere in our election. We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing, and I think it's time.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you have no idea.
17 do you doubt 17
our
military
has
and
no
civilian
idea.
Agencies? Well,
yeah,
he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely
She doesn't like Putin because Putin has outsmarted her at every step of the way. Excuse me. Putin has outsmarted her in Syria. He's outsmarted her every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes, that's
And I would
fine.
like to ask you this direct question. The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind these hacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else.
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin. I have no idea. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad. Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way.
How childish. Can you imagine anything more childish than, no, you're the puppet, Hillary, you're the puppet? And I think that this was interesting in that you actually saw Donald Trump condemn hypothetical, although he doesn't even agree that it's going on, or at least he's not conceding or admitting that he believes or understands that, condemn Russian involvement. Now, of course, he completely sort of milquetoasted it by saying, oh, I condemn the involvement of any country in trying to influence American elections. But it was actually interesting to see him say that, although every critique of Russia and Putin from Donald Trump, it's like pulling teeth. It's so reluctant, and it really tells us a lot about why we suspect partially the tax returns are not being released and business deals with Russia, which Trump, of course, has claimed he doesn't have, but then he's also claimed he does have, and who really knows what the truth is. Right-wingers did not like Chris Wallace's interjection of that basic fact. I believe Chris Wallace did absolutely nothing wrong in that segment and just said, no, the facts are that is the intelligence consensus. Given that, what is your opinion? Will you denounce? Will you condemn? Overall, the questions at the debate last night, favorable questions in terms of topic to Donald Trump, but Chris Wallace moderately fair in terms of pushing both candidates when it comes to trying to not answer questions. And overall, given what we've come to expect from anybody associated with Fox News, I think that Chris Wallace did okay. All right, let's take a break. There's still much else to discuss. I do want to talk about allegations of voter fraud and so-called rigged elections more specifically. I want to talk about what's going on in Utah and much more. I'm on Twitter at dpakman, and remember, you can sign up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Things have gotten super interesting in the state of Utah. There's a new poll that was released yesterday by Emerson College, which shows that not Donald Trump, not Hillary Clinton, not Libertarian Gary Johnson, but rather independent Mormon candidate Evan McMullin is leading in Utah for the presidential race. The survey shows that McMullin is at 31% support, Trump 27, Clinton 24 in the state of Utah. Now, the margin of error on this poll was 3.6% according to the methodology, and it also is just one poll. In an average of Utah polls, McMullin is not in the lead. It is still Donald Trump in the lead. So we're just talking about one state. We're just talking about one poll. But the major Republican candidate not having Utah as a complete and total foregone conclusion of a gimme is major, major news. The last time that a Republican lost Utah was 1964. When Lyndon B. Johnson defeated Barry Goldwater. The last independent candidate to win electoral votes was segregationist George Wallace, in 1968. So I don't agree with voting for Evan McMullin. Evan McMullin does not represent my views, but I have to hand it to the Mormon community. They are really putting the evangelical Christians to shame, as I discussed on the Monday bonus show earlier this week. There's this situation when we look at different Christian groups where evangelical support for Donald Trump basically peaked in July at about 78%. And it has declined somewhat since, where right now about 2/3 of white evangelicals say that they are still supporting Donald Trump. And by the way, that's after the video was released of him saying that using his celebrity status to just grab women in the pussy is something that he thinks is okay and you just sometimes got to do. 2/3 of evangelical Christian voters, white evangelical Christian voters, still are supporting Donald Trump. There is nothing Christian about Donald Trump's candidacy at all. We've seen the magazine funded by Billy Graham say that it's absolutely absurd to think that any Christians would support Donald Trump. But regardless, the evangelical Christians are by and large still supporting Trump. However, We have a survey from this last week among Utah Mormons, and only 38% say that they are supporting Donald Trump, a higher percentage saying that they have an unfavorable view of Donald Trump, even more unfavorable than that of Hillary Clinton, who has her fair share of unfavorability herself. So this is so fascinating in so many ways. Utah Mormons, by and large, vote red, and it is fascinating that they are just running away from Donald Trump to the point at which we can say Utah is not a gimme for the Republican nominee, and that should be without question in any normal election. In the end, Trump's probably going to win Utah, but it is going to be way, way closer than it has been in a very long time. Part of that just because the vote is being significantly split 3 or even 4 ways, because Gary Johnson actually is quite popular in Utah. But a lot of this because Mormons are saying, I don't see why I would vote Trump. He does not represent my values, and that's absolutely true. Let's talk about rigging elections. Donald Trump continues to push these claims that the election is rigged against him. He's suggesting widespread voter fraud. The conspiracy media has been absolutely loving it. I mean, they've just been eating from Trump's hand on this issue. And I've alluded to the inconvenient reality for Donald Trump that this is an accusation heavily against Republican governors and legislatures in many cases. Only 17 states in the United States right now and Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, have Democratic-controlled electoral systems. So Donald Trump may believe the only way he could possibly lose is because millions of dead people vote, or there's vote rigging going on, or people in the states that are overseeing the elections are somehow rigging it against Trump. But it's mostly an attack on Republicans, if that is indeed what Donald Trump believes is going to happen. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, 26 states have an elected Secretary of State or Lieutenant Governor who oversee the elections, and 7 more of those officials share authority with a commission or board, which also is either bipartisan or sometimes Republican-controlled. Then you have 8 more states that have a chief official selected by a legislature or governor. The rest are run by some kind of appointed electoral commission. So when you take a step back and you say, okay, the election's rigged, so says Trump. Number one, he's basically alleging that elected boards, bipartisan commissions, et cetera, somehow it's all rigged. It's Republicans and Democrats working together. And then in many cases, you're talking about secretaries of state or lieutenant governors that are Republicans that would be the ones who are rigging it against Trump. Now, I know that the Republican Party in recent days and recent weeks has not been thrilled with Donald Trump in many ways, but to suggest that there is a broader rigging going on here suggests that it is really Republicans by and large that are rigging the election against Donald Trump. In total, 29 states have Republican-controlled election processes, and that represents 302 electoral votes. So Republican officials alone represent more than the necessary 270 electoral votes that are required to be elected president of the United States. If the election is rigged, Republicans have rigged it. And in fact, this election is, as I've said many times, it's mostly decided, and it's going to come down to a few swing states. And those swing states are really under Republican control. I mean, we're talking about Florida, Iowa, Nevada, where I'm broadcasting from today, North Carolina, Ohio. These are all overseen by Republican chief election officials. Even Trump's own close advisors are trying to push back against the rigged election stuff. Trump's national campaign co-chair, Sam Clovis, told the Boston Herald 2 days ago, I have a lot of faith in the secretaries of state across the country, when he was asked about the entire election is rigged thing. Trump's own running mate, Mike Pence, said a few days ago that the campaign will accept the results of the election and that the only, quote, sense of a rigged election came from the obvious bias in the national media. That's not rigging an election, by the way. Here are actual ways in which elections are, in a sense, rigged, for using a word that Trump uses. Gerrymandering is an epidemic, right? The strategic drawing of congressional districts, most recently to help Republicans by Republicans, that is an unfair rigging of the process, if you want to use that word. Voter suppression by restricting early voting hours, and in other ways as well, in traditionally, historically, disproportionately Democratic minority areas. If you want to find some kind of rigging, that's a way in which you could argue there is rigging going on. And I could go on, but bottom line, what Trump is saying is, number one, unproven, and number two, if true, mostly the fault of the Republicans that are in charge.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Republican Arizona Senator John McCain has exposed what would be the plan to obstruct Hillary Clinton if indeed she is elected on November 8th. You'll remember that on October 8th, John McCain announced that he was withdrawing support of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and the, quote, more reasonable McCain, and I agree with that by and large, the more reasonable Republican McCain said, and I'll show you the quote, Donald Trump's behavior this week, concluding with the disclosure of his demeaning comments about women and his boasts about sexual assaults, make it impossible to continue to offer even conditional support for his candidacy. So John McCain took a principled stand saying, I'm not voting for Hillary. I've not voted for a Democrat, maybe ever in a very long time, he said, but I cannot vote for Trump, and he felt the need to say it publicly. Fantastic. John McCain should absolutely be applauded for this. Until 2 days ago, being interviewed by a Philadelphia radio talk show host while campaigning for Pennsylvania's Pat Toomey, he revealed the plan if indeed Hillary Clinton is elected. A quote from John McCain on 1210 WPHT radio in Philadelphia. I promise you that we will be united against any Supreme Court nominee that Hillary Clinton, if she were president, would put up. I promise you. This is where we need the majority, and Pat Toomey is probably as articulate and effective on the floor of the Senate as anyone I have encountered. If you thought Republican obstructionism was bad under President Barack Obama, and it was historically bad under President Barack Obama, just wait until potential President Hillary Clinton takes over. It's really easy in this election to think about Donald Trump and a Donald Trump presidency as being a systemic and fundamental threat in so many ways. The Supreme Court is one of those major, major ways in which we should be horrified about a Trump presidency. The approach to regulating and suing media that could potentially be pushed by a Trump Supreme Court based on what Trump has talked about, suing media outlets, et cetera, tax cuts for the rich, et cetera, all of that stuff. A Trump Supreme Court would be a disaster. But a Hillary Clinton presidency will bring with it a Republican Party that is as unwilling to work with her as it has been unwilling to work with President Obama, combined with the reality that a portion of the Republican electorate, specifically the outrageous Trump supporters, are going to get, to take a phrase from Trump at the debate last night, very nasty if Hillary Clinton wins. And so there's no question in my mind that it's of fundamental, paramount importance to prevent Donald Trump from being the next president of the United States. The best way to do that is by voting for Hillary Clinton, which I will be doing. This is not going to be an easy thing for Hillary Clinton. If you thought win or lose, as soon as the next president is inaugurated, Antonin Scalia's Supreme Court vacancy is being filled, maybe not, at least according to what Senator John McCain is telling us here. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Trump's post-election planning. There have been these rumors that Donald Trump has mostly been setting himself up to create a right-wing media network ahead of losing the election, if indeed he loses the election, and the polls are not looking good right now. The Financial Times is now reporting that Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has already started informal discussions to start a sort of Trump TV network. The report specifically says that Kushner has already contacted Ari Burkhoff, the founder and chief executive of LionTree. LionTree is a boutique investment bank which often invests or advises cable television and in other media deals, etc. And the Trump electorate, if you could coalesce them into a TV audience, could definitely be attracted to, the Trump brand of nuttiness. But the Financial Times says that cable companies might not be hugely enthusiastic about a new Trump TV cable network because of cord cutting that's going on, and we've talked about the problems that the big cable companies are having. So then Trump could go the direction of starting an online news operation, but that probably wouldn't command as much attention, and there would be a lot more competition as we see in online news. So I wonder if Trump's followers will, number one, ever figure out how Trump really set them up to just be used, right? The Trump supporters now are just being used by Trump maybe to become president of the United States without really giving a flying whatever about them. And if Trump doesn't win, then he's just going to use them, potentially, at least the rumors are, and we've now heard about this conversation involving Jared Kushner, potentially to bring in money to a television network. If and when this happens, my headline is going to be, self-proclaimed business genius starts television channel nearly 2 decades after the internet age begins. Even more and more suggestions from this conversation that this entire campaign, this entire Donald Trump candidacy was a stunt. It started off as something that Donald Trump probably figured would get him some attention, it would get him some publicity, it might make it so that he can command even more of a powerful salary on his next reality show. But ultimately, I believe this is going to blow up in Donald Trump's face, and he will probably be able to turn it into some kind of nice business deal. That is often what Donald Trump does. Sometimes it ends in bankruptcy, but sometimes it's a good business deal. Personally, I don't know that I'd be watching Trump TV, but I do look forward to hearing more about it if and when, and that is an if still. We still have to get out there and vote. Donald Trump is defeated by Hillary Clinton on November 8th. But so far, the rumor appears to have some weight behind it if you believe the report from the Financial Times. I have a voicemail number that you can call any time of day. The number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Let's take a listen to this voicemail that came in.
Well, David, thanks for your show. I really enjoy watching and hearing your opinions. But I've got a question. I'm just wondering if all bullies, kind of like, Trump's a bully, if all bullies turn into crybabies when they don't get their way. Think about it. Have a good evening. Bye now.
It's interesting because Donald Trump is a bully in many, many ways, but he does seem to turn into a crybaby when things don't go his way. He has these insane Twitter meltdowns that are just absolutely, they make no sense. They're childish and capricious in every way. Anytime he loses, as Hillary Clinton did point out yesterday, the election is rigged, everybody's scamming, everybody tricked Trump, everybody's not playing fair. When Donald Trump doesn't even himself have a particularly strong record of playing by the rules and playing fair, as was also pointed out in yesterday's debate, everything from bringing in Chinese steel, et cetera, et cetera. So no, I don't know that all bullies become crybabies when things don't go their way, but certainly Donald Trump, the bully, has become a total crybaby when things have not gone his way. On the bonus show today, I have such a great story for you on the bonus show here from Las Vegas. Yesterday, when I was walking to dinner or to an event that was part of the conference, I was stopped by someone who recognized me and was a fan of the show. And let's just say that the story involves a fan of the David Pakman Show, a U.S. ambassador, and a former Major League Baseball player. Okay, that's all I will say. I'll tell the whole story on the bonus show, and I think you're really going to like the story. We will also talk about the future of the David Pakman Show town halls, and I will also tell you about a new idea involving seaweed and cows to curb global greenhouse gas emissions. It is such a terrific bonus show today. Believe me, trust me on this. It's extraordinary. And you can sign up by going to davidpakman.com/membership. That is the one and only place to sign up for membership. And I will mention to you the coupon code HATRIOT40. That's HATRIOT40. It's available and it gets you a really nice discount off of membership. Don't miss my Vegas story from last night. Sign up. I will speak to you then.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.